Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of PyCon Sweden 2022. I hope everyone is excited. Today we have 2 keynotes, 7 talks and 3 workshops. Of course, we have the lottery and the aftercon, so very excited for that. The first keynote is from Magnus Perman from Nexer. Nexer is also sponsoring us for 3 years now, I believe, so thank you very much for that. And yeah, Magnus works as a competence unit manager and tech lead for data science at Nexer Group. So he will have the keynote about data literacy. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, welcome to this days of PyCon. Hope you had a great day yesterday. I know I had at least, and I hope you will have a really good day today as well. And as yeah, you heard, this is the 3rd year in a row that I'm speaking here. But the 2 years previous to this one has been online, so it's great to be back on site again here at PyCon. And yeah, really great to see all of you here in this room. So my talk will be about data literacy. Yeah, as you heard, I'm from Nexer Group. We're part of the sponsoring team here for PyCon as well. And data literacy is something that I am very passionate about. I think it's really important, and it's about the knowledge on how to work with data, basically. So it's a bit going back to basics. It's not the edge kind of knowledge, but it's very important in the day of age we live in today with all the connected products that create a lot of data. So the agenda for this session, I thought I would just go through a bit about my background and the company I work for, the background of Nexer. Then we'll jump into the actual topic of data literacy, why it's important, why and how Python fits into all this. And we'll jump into a bit about self-service analytics and what we mean with that. And I'm working a lot with notebooks, and I think we heard something about that yesterday as well in the afternoon, so that's great. I will talk a bit about that as well. And some roadblocks for data literacy, how that could look like, and yeah, some key takeaways, and in the end, some questions. There will be some time for questions as well. So, jumping into background on me then. So yeah, I'm Magnus Perman from Nexer Group. I'm based in Malmö, here in Sweden. So I have a Master of Science in Computer Science from LTH in Lund. I am a consultant unit manager for the Predict team at Nexer, so it's a team of data scientists at Nexer in South. So I've been working with global clients within retail, industry and media since I started at Nexer, and I've been working within data warehouse and business intelligence and analytics since 2004. So quite a long time now, and I've seen a lot of changes over these years in this space. I have 3 different Google Cloud certifications. I've been speaker at other conferences before, some conference in San Francisco called Analytics and Data Summit. I've been speaker here at PyCon and other various conferences as well. And here's my contact details if you want to get in contact with me after this session. And me and Hilde are outside this auditorium as well in our booth, so come by and talk to us. So some facts around Nexer then. So this is our slogan, promising future, and not just for our clients, but of course for our employees and yeah, the society as a whole as well, which is really important. We have a lot of social initiatives at Nexer as well, so we are sponsoring schools in South Africa as one example to get provide kids there with a better future or better start in life. So I think that's really important in these days that we live in, to have a social initiative as well. If we talk about the company, what we do, so we are, from the start, we are a consultant company with specialized consultants, but over the years we have grown to provide the whole stack of offerings here. So we have strategy, everything from digital advice, setting up strategies, and so on, to technology. Of course, that's where we have most of us working today as well, with tech, implementing stuff, and IT, and a lot of Python developers, of course. And then we have communication as well as one part. We have a digital communications agency actually within our company that can handle everything around communicating around the things we do and build. So we have the whole circle of offerings here within Nixerden. And yeah, we are all over the world, I would say, so roughly 2,300 employees, most here in Sweden still, but we have grown a lot over the last decade or so in India, US, Brazil, China, UK, and so on. So we are growing a lot. So we are in 15 countries today with a revenue of roughly 3 billion SEK. And we are privately owned by a company called Danir Group, which is founded by a guy called Dan Olofsson back in the 80s. So he founded Nixer a long time ago, and now kind of the umbrella of companies have grown into 10,000 employees. So I think, yeah, that's positive for many things to be privately owned. We're not on the stock markets don't have that short-term pressure every quarter and so on, but more of a long-term vision for the company. We are working with some well-known clients here in Sweden. And me, myself, I've been working many years for IKEA as a consultant, building up their analytics department, among other things. So thanks for listening to that. So now we can jump into the actual topic of data literacy then. What do we mean with data literacy, and why is it so important? So when we talk about literacy, this is what we mean. One of the most important skills that you learn in school. And yeah, you need that to be able to get on in life, of course, the ability to read and write. But literacy can also mean to be knowledgeable in a certain area. So if we talk about data literacy, what do we mean then? So data literacy is basically the knowledge on how to read, to work, to analyze, and to communicate, discuss around data. So the ability to read data, of course, to know where the data comes from, what type of things you should look for in the data, what kind of different pitfalls there could be in the data. To work with data, of course, you need to filter out data, zoom in on different parts of the data, and to analyze data is, of course, to basically create insights on the data and yeah, create some good insights that you can benefit from. And then last but not least, to be able to communicate and argue with those insights that you found together with other people and kind of persuade them or show why this is a really good insight. So how does the data literacy adoption look like then? So this, yeah, it's Halloween, so I added this little scary guy. But yeah, the figures are perhaps a bit scary as well. So roughly 11% of all employees worldwide feel that they are confident in their data literacy skills. So this is from Click statistics. 24% of senior decision makers, they pass some standard data literacy tests. And maybe this one is interesting as well. So 67% of executives, so those that make a lot of decision, they don't feel comfortable actually working with the tools that they have to access their data and to use data to provide information for their decisions. So that's interesting, because that means that a lot of the decisions they make are made on gut feelings instead of informed decisions on data. And also interesting is that the data literacy of the generation that is right now coming out into the work life, so the millennials, the first generation that's kind of born and raised into the digital world, that thinks that the internet is just something that's there and it's not a technology. their data literacy skills is not better than the average. So that's also interesting that they have the same data literacy skills or lack of data literacy skills as the overall workforce. And if we then look at data literacy, so of course, since more and more companies and organizations become data-driven and data is becoming an even more important part of our daily lives and work lives, then data literacy is seen as one of the most in-demand skills by 2030. Hope it's possible to see, but this is TDWI, so Transforming Data with Intelligence. It's a famous old organization that has worked with analytics for maybe 30, 40 years, something like that. So they see that by 2030, there will be a real shortage of data literate employees. So companies need to really focus on upskilling their employees into be data literate. And another famous organization here, so Gartner, they are tweeting about by next year data literacy will become essential in driving business value. So they see the need for starting a lot of education programs and getting the employees upskilled in data literacy, basically. So what is data and information then, and how can we present it to data and information? This could be one example. This is a famous city sign from US. I think it's a city in California. They have some attributes around this city, so populations, feet above sea level and established, and by themselves, of course, they make a lot of sense. Maybe not population, because that would change all the time, but then in the end, why would you make adding them all together and make a total out of it? So it's kind of, here you need to think critically and see that, this doesn't make any sense. But one by one, they make a lot of sense. But you can't use the addition of them. That doesn't make any sense, of course. This is another interesting example. So how would you react to when this information and data is presented to you? So you have a stop sign, a dead end, but a detour going at the same direction as the dead end. And what do you do in this situation? So here you need to take some informed decision on where to go, actually, and try out. And this is even a worse example, I think. So a stop sign, and where can you go from this? So you can't go back, forward, you can't turn left or right. So I guess this would be an anomaly or something, an outlier in the data that you would just discard from your data set if this was. But in this situation, of course, if I'm driving here, I need to do something. So it's interesting how data can be presented to you, and it's not always black and white and straightforward things that you see in data. So if we look at data literacy then, what is data literacy and what different skills are involved in data literacy? So you usually see these three skills with an intersection in between. So you have some information literacy. You're able to digest information and read information and be able to see what that's about. And then you have some technical skills. Maybe in this room there are a lot of Python developers, so you could use Python as the technology to read and work with data. And if you're a business person out in a company, maybe you would use another tool like Click or Power BI or something else to look at data. And then, of course, there are statistical literacy, so the ability to use some statistics on top of the data and information to draw insights. And of course, there are different levels here of statistical knowledge, but maybe on the base level, you would know like mean and a median, what's the difference between these two and things like that. So some statistics knowledge is needed as well when you look at information. So this is another way of looking at it. So you have these three different categories here. So information, what data and data sources are involved when looking at this data or information. That's important to know where the data comes from. And in the bottom here we have the analytics as well. So what type of analytical or data science methods has been applied on top of this data. And of course in the top we have the value. That's the most important one. What's the question that you want to answer? What's the target business problem or target outcome that you want to solve? And how is value really created on top of all the information and the analytics that you're doing on top of data then? And if we look at the background of data literacy, maybe 60 years ago, something like that, in the 50s, 60s, when the first computers came out, this is what it looked like to be working with data and information on computers. It was a really siloed environment, and only a few handful people, maybe in every country, that could have access to data and use data for calculations. So this is the really old days where people actually were like lab coats and were in a lab environment working with computers and data. And this is how it looks. This is how it looks today. So basically, data is at everyone's fingertips, in our mobile phones, in our work life, private life, everywhere. You have data at your fingertips being served to you for you to take decisions on it. And on the right here, we have my app from my electricity provider, which is a bit scary these days as well. So that's why I had it. So these are my electricity consumption. It's provided to me very detailed data in this app. I can see every hour, every day, how much data I am consuming at my house together with my family. And of course, I need to look at all this data now, especially these days, and make informed decision on what to do. And that I have done as well. So you can see the last years and this year, and I'm trying to reduce electricity consumption, of course. So data is provided to you, and you need to make decisions based on the data that is provided to you privately as well as in your work life. So what's the background of this then? How have we ended up with the data being at everyone's fingertips, and basically that everyone has access to data? So it's a couple of things that has happened during the last decades. Of course, everything is connected these days. Everything you buy, every gadget that that is produced is basically connected to internet and producing a lot of data. And usually you can access that data as well. We have a lot of advances in compute power. We have always had that since computers were born, basically. Compute power has increased every year, every decade. But what is interesting as well, that is over the last 2 decades, or the decade has been the kind of the cloud revolution again. So basically everyone can get access to a supercomputer at their fingertips for a short time, but for a very small amount of money. And 10 to 20 years ago, that was not possible, because then you needed to pay for that compute power up front. You need to invest in a data center or in a really powerful data rack to do a lot of powerful calculations. So of course that has lowered the threshold for getting into doing a lot of cool stuff together with data, and I mean the threshold, and that's why we have seen a lot of new companies and so on pop up, and being able to scale together with their user base has increased them. So cloud adoption has meant a lot for this as well. And of course we have new advances in how to store and work with data, like Hadoop, Spark, how to distribute data processing over many different nodes. And of course, I need to mention Python and R as an example as well, as technologies that has really lifted the data community as well over the last years here. So how does this fit into Python, all this then? So reading data, if we go back to the reading, working, analyzing, and communicating with data. So reading data, I mean, Python is a multi-purpose language, and but it's ideal for data processing as well. So you can read large volumes of data, or you can read normal volumes of data, but if you need to read large volumes of data, then you have specific libraries that are better of doing that, more distributed, like PySpark, like Dask and others. And if you just want to read data in general, Python has great capabilities of reading data. So you have the whole kind of the whole toolbox here of reading different type of input files and data into Python then. So working with data is also, of course, simple in Python. You have the pandas, the Python data analysis library, which is perfect for working with data, as you all know. It's made for working with data, and it's really easy to work with data in pandas. So you can tweak and turn data in any way you want, wrangle it, filter. Yeah, basically you can do anything that you could think of with the pandas data frame. And again, if you have bigger volumes of data, you have a rich library of other Python's functions that you can use. And for an old SQL guy like me, I was happy when I started working with Python many years ago that I could actually find a library that could just let me run SQL on top of my data frames as well. So that was good to see. Yeah, working with data is I mean, Python is great for that as well. So perfect language for working with data in general. And to analyze data, of course, now we get into the bit more advanced stuff. So once you have the data in Python, of course, you want to analyze it and create some insights. So yeah, just naming a couple of libraries here. NumPy, great for mathematics. Scikit, Keras, perfect for machine learning and deep learning and going even into the more advanced analytics. And then kind of, yeah, the notebooks to rule them all and to gather them in one place and yeah, really try to tell a story around the data. So really long time ago, you needed to do all this in different places. Of course, you were running some SQL, perhaps in an SQL editor, in an Oracle database or something else, and then you move that one into some other tool where you continued analyzing it, and now you can do everything in notebooks. So it's perfect for working with data in one place. And communicating with data, maybe this is one of the most important steps with working with data then, to actually be able to argument around the insights that you created. And to do this, you need to visualize. So you need to show your insight in some way. Just giving somebody like a Python function and saying this creates a lot of insight doesn't make sense. So you need to really show what's the benefit of this. So, and I mean, however cool insights you are creating, you will never make an impact if you can't tell a story around the actual insight. So notebook again, they are ideal for telling a story because you can save everything in one place. So you can have everything from comments to pictures to visualizations, and then of course the actual code in the notebook as well to create the insights. So they are perfect for telling a story end to end around the insight. And yeah, they can be used as more of like PowerPoints to talk in like a business context. Business people are used to being presented with PowerPoints back and forth, but if they get a notebook and if you're able to set them up with access to notebooks, the notebook themselves could actually be the interactive PowerPoint where they could actually go in and look at the insight and the data that are used in the notebook. So often when working with notebooks, I used to think that you can have multiple audiences. You need to think about what type of users that would be interested in looking at the notebook. So you can think of everything from business users to decision makers to coders or to data scientists. So everyone should be able to look at the notebook and get something out of it. It shouldn't be frightening for those that don't know data science and stuff like that. So notebooks is just one example where you can add like a map and be able to have interactivity in the notebook for business users to click around and explore the data themselves, which is really important. So, and if you have some machine learning or AI in the notebook or in your code, then trying to avoid black box as much as possible. If you're doing some insights, then at least try to do maybe some feature ranking. If you have a lot of features that are involved in the machine learning, at least show which features have the most power on the predictions and stuff like that. So trying to avoid black box as much as possible when you communicate with this data. Yeah, so just naming a couple of libraries here again, so I think you are well known with all these libraries to communicate with data: matplotlib, plotly, seaborn. Maybe matplot is for the basic things, plotly a bit more if you want to go into web, being able to publish it on websites and so on. Seaborn, a bit more for perhaps the more advanced analytics when you use that. And then of course widgets, using widgets like IPy widgets to really make your notebooks interactive and for the users to play around in the notebook and create different insights based on their input. So adding sliders and drop down and everything you can think about when you have widgets to make the notebook something that you can play around with and create insights yourself. Try out different things. So there are some bad examples on when you communicate with data or visualizations, communicating insights. So this is one example where you have like a bad example here on the left, where the y-axis starts at 50, which makes these three groups look quite different. But then if they start at 0, as it should be, then you see that they are quite close to each other. So you need to think about how you present your insights as well, of course. This is another one where the misleading one there on the left is zooming out too much on the y-axis. So, but on the right side you see that it has more proportionate scale on the y-axis. So then you can actually trend that there is some changes over these years that the data is showing. And if you again look at some misleading picture here on the left, so these are a couple of years, and if you zoom in only on a couple of months of these years, it could look like there is a increasing pattern, or the trend is increasing, while on the right side you see that the overall trend is not that positive over the last couple of years. I think this looks like some stock exchange figures perhaps over the last years. It looked good in June, 2020, but then if you look at from last couple of years, last year at least, it doesn't look that good. So very important to think about when you present data, and if you're zooming in on a certain time interval, you need to show the whole picture again. So you can prove everything with data and statistics, of course, but you need to think about the bigger picture as well. Important to think about when you work with data as well is that there is something called confirmation bias. So that's basically based on your own perceptions. When you start working with data and look for insights, and in the data you usually look for that insight that you think will happen. And then probably you can find that insight in the data. You can, as I said, prove everything with statistics. If you're looking for certain insight, you can probably find some parts of the data where that insight is true, but often there are more than one truth in the data, and so you need to look at find the most powerful truth in the data, of course. So watch out for jumping into the first conclusion. I mean, if you find some insights, that could be really great and it's motivating and so on, but keep digging. Basically be open-minded and keep digging and looking for more insights, because usually you can find more interesting insights in the data once you start looking more into the actual data. So some famous quote here by Homer Simpson. So when we compare then data literacy with data science, of course, data literacy, I don't mean data science when I talk about that. I don't mean that everybody should be like a Python developer or a data scientist. That's not, everyone don't want to be that, and everybody shouldn't be that as well. But being able to have data literate employees or being data literate is being able to communicate and discuss around data decisions, basically. So of course, it's a key aspect of being a data-driven organization, that you need to find that base level, at least, of data literacy, so people can take data into their work and be able to discuss about data. And of course, as I said, data literacy is not data literacy is applicable for different target groups. So you need to see it from different target groups, from their perspective. What do they need to do their work, basically? So of course, being a data-driven organization means a lot around how we can make data available, and here data engineering and Python of course plays a big role in this. So setting up data pipelines, data handling, everything, Python has a great libraries for that, and of course you can publish data either in raw form. Perhaps if you're a data scientist, you would like to get access to the data in its purest form. You want to do all the aggregations and calculations yourself. You want to find patterns, but maybe if you're a business user, or maybe if you want to see data on a different level, then aggregated data is the way to your preferred way of looking at data. And then you can publish this into a self-service analytics area where many people from all different levels in the company can access the data, basically, and not creating silos where data is in one place and then there is another place where you need to go and look for data that you need as well. So as I said, some of these users will probably use like Click or Power BI or Tableau to actually explore the data that you have in the self-service area, and this is fine. I mean, these tools are great for using data and being able to create insights on top of data then as well. So it's about going from this guy that was really by himself working with data, and really people were depending on him to make a lot of good work with the data, to going into this where we have like data at everyone's fingertips and basically democratizing data access and being able to create insights on top of the data. So when we look at different type of analytics, we have this graph here that shows a couple of different levels when you work with the data. So in the first part here, you have the descriptive analytics. So this is basically looking at what has happened. Maybe we had a lot of sale from one store that already that somehow popped up. So that store sold a lot over the last week. So we will see, okay, that happened. And the next phase is, why did it happen? That's when you can connect two different information or two data sets. Maybe we have one data set that shows the campaign data. Maybe we did a really successful campaign around promoting a certain store or certain products, and that's why if we then connect that to the sales data, we can see that happened during the same time interval. So then we can see, okay, that was the why on why the sales suddenly jumped. So we can look at why did it happen. Next phase is the what will happen and how can we make it happen. So if we look at these two first one, that's more the space where analysts work in today, and the next two is more of the data science work. So basically trying to look at patterns in the past and how can we use all those patterns in that huge information of data, that how can we use that to make predictions into the future then and be able to predict. And I think perhaps that over the next years the boundaries between these two will perhaps be a bit more blurry, because we have great tools, and I mean like the Hugging Face, like tools like this that makes the data scientist work easier. So perhaps we will have like analysts that will do some predictions as well and work a lot more into that space as well. But I think there will always be also the need to have people that can actually create the models and understand a lot around the backgrounds around the models and so on. So of course, when you work with data, there is, and self-service analytics in particular, there is a lot of things that you need to encourage. So of course, curiosity, to be able to be curious when you look at the data, to spark that curiosity in your users, and to be able to make them creative, for them to be, let them play around in the data, to let them have that opportunity to be creative. And also critical thinking is of course really important, because critical thinking is a really important thing when you look at the data, if you remember those different stop signs we had. And just don't take data for granted as the truth. Be critical, and maybe you need to discard some of the data and so on. So when you design data solutions or products, you really need to make products that encourage all these three, to make your users being able to work with all these three different things inside the data. So they are basically key drivers for data literacy, because that kind of, if you have that opportunity, then it becomes fun to work with data, and then people want to learn more about data and so on, and then it will be really good for improving their data literacy. So that's where notebooks also come into play. So notebooks are interactive. They are some I call them playbooks sometimes, because it's really thought to be a really interactive environment where you can try out a lot of different things. So they are great for coders and data scientists to try out, to combine a lot of different libraries and create a lot of different code. But they are also great for an audience, if you do it the right way, for them to digest the data and insights and actually work with the data inside the notebooks. So I often think of them as kind of a boilerplate. So you could provide them with a boilerplate, maybe, and everything is not finished. You can create more of a framework for them to continue building upon. And if you make it into a boilerplate for them to elaborate and to try out different things, then it will be really good, because they will like it a lot, and they will create some cool insights based on that. And again, so explainable AI, not black box. And going into, PowerPoints. So they would see them as some users would see them as, they would be interested in more of the insights, of course, in the notebook. So they would use the notebooks more from the visuals and from the interactivity, and be able to create insights on that. And if you have other peer data scientists or coders, they would like to see the actual code behind and see what's happening there. So they are useful for all type of target audiences. So if we look at roadblocks for data literacy, of course, going into this data-driven world that we have been during the last years, is many business have been doing stuff the same way for many years. So of course there could be some resistance from employees that would like to work in the same way that I have always worked, and not using that much data into their daily work. So of course that could be a roadblock. Could be a roadblock as well as for the lack of leadership anchoring. So many of the big companies today have like a chief digital officer or chief analytics officer, all the way up into the management group, to the top management of the company. But if you don't have that, it could be hard to actually anchor why data needs to be a part of the company strategy, basically. So that's also important, to have the anchoring high up in the company. And lack of governance, I've seen this as well. So of course it's fun to make data products and data layers and so on, but if you don't have any governance or like long-term strategy around this, then it will soon become a mess. Like if you create one type of data layer in one place, and you do a similar thing in another within another part of the company that's basically looking at the same data but maybe doing different aggregations, then it will just become a mess, and it will be not easy to work with, because you don't know who is doing the right and you have some duplication of work, of course, from different departments then. And this is also quite I wouldn't say, it happens, but in big companies there could be organizational silos. So one part of the company could be really protective of their data. They wanted to see the data as their own and their kind of property, and this is their place. They should only work with that type of data, and nobody else should have access to the data. But unless it's really sensitive data like employee or HR data and things like that, then there is nothing stopping publishing the data company-wide for all different for all departments to have access to the data, because as a company everything is connected, of course, within the company. So those are the different roadblocks that you need to think about that could happen as well. So some key takeaways from this data literacy talk then. So Python, it's really great for data literacy because we've seen it has all the parts within Python to actually work with data, to analyze data, to communicate with data. And to encourage data literacy, we really need to make data products fun to work with. So that's a really important thing to have. The insight itself is not that exciting if you don't make it fun to look at it and work with the insights. And think about all the different user audiences that could be interested in the insight. So you need to think about that and keep it on their level. And I mean, we as Python professionals, we have a great opportunity to increase data literacy because we can make it easier for other parts of the company to being able to digest data and use data for their insights and their business, day-to-day business. And it's great because if we get more people involved, we will have better outcomes from the work with data. I mean, there are a lot of domain experts out in different companies that have a lot of domain experts that they're maybe in medical, they are experts in the technology around the medicals, but then if they become data literate as well, and they use that knowledge together with the data literacy, it will become really good outcomes. So if we get more people involved, we will only have better outcomes from the data literacy as well. So yeah, that kind of rounds it up. We will have it will be a promising future with the data literacy, I think, and I think it will become even more and more important over the next couple of years to come. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for this very interesting presentation on data.
Yep.
We have time for a couple of questions. I know I have a few for sure. So please, I welcome all of you in the audience.
Maybe I'm first. Can you please pass the mic? Thank you for the great presentation, Magnus.
Thank you.
I have a question for people that don't know how to code on the organizational level. Like, would you say everyone should know how to code in Python? I would like to see that, of course, but where's a good starting point for maybe business stakeholders to step into data literacy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think everybody can be or want to be a coder, but I would like to see that as well in the future, of course. But I think as a base level, just to work with data is like, that's the base level. So if you have that in a notebook, so you have the insight together with some code, then for those people to have an interactive like graph or something that they can play around with, that's the first level. And then I've seen as well that sometimes I make the code not trying to hide it, but make it visible, and in those boilerplate as well, to make it easier for like a business users to copy and paste and just try out their own with their own figures, just like I heard in the talk yesterday with the students, that they could try out different things. That could be applicable for business users as well. And I've seen that in some cases that there have been business users that said, oh, I thought it was really complicated to be coding stuff, but I can just see your method and I can insert my own figures there and I can just run it within the notebook and I have some output. So it's definitely sparks some interest, I think, in business users as well. So that's good, I think. Yeah. So maybe we'll have some more coders, at least if we make it available for them to look at.
Thank you.
Yep.
More questions? No more questions?
Hello, Magnus.
Hello.
How do you think you should approach when you go to business people that use a lot of Excel and don't want to work with anything else?
Yeah, I've seen that as well. So, I mean, if they are if they are used to working that tabular format and stuff like that, then yeah, notebooks can write to Excel files. So that could be something that you could do in a notebook to actually write out the insights into an Excel at the same time as you show it. And then if they are used to working in that format, then you have the tabular format within a notebook as well. So that could be one example of not using Excel, but using like something they are used to, but in a different environment for them to look at. So yeah, that could be one thing.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Great presentation.
Hello.
I had a question about visualizations. A couple of years ago at PyCon, there was somebody who presented for Plotly called Dash. And I was wondering if you've seen Dash or what you thought about it, because it's an interactive visualization tool and having it integrated, I think, with web applications. So it seemed like a really cool one. I don't see a lot of people talk about it. I actually know nobody myself who uses it or even knows about it, but I was wondering if you've seen it and interacted with it and your thoughts on it, if you have.
Yeah, not that exact one I haven't seen, but I've seen other technologies and libraries that visualize and be able to provide it to a bigger audience, like Shiny for R. If you think about R, Shiny is there as one of those where you can like publish out to a web page with some interactive graphs as well. But then I think with like the notebooks adoption, then you have basically the same thing within notebooks, that you can publish a notebook through a website or through a web interface at least, and then make your users connect with a notebook and do the stuff there instead. So maybe it's more if you need to have like people outside the company being able to do stuff like that, then it could be interesting, because then you don't want to publish a notebook perhaps for them to access the data. So yeah.
Great. Do we have more questions from the audience? No? Perhaps I can have a question. You mentioned the communication part, and you saw some very interesting plots and some of the bias that we can introduce, for example, with the access and everything. But you also mentioned the argue part. And perhaps when it comes to the argument, when we want to argue or present something, we would like to have some more metrics, concrete metrics on it. What's your views on that?
Yeah, so I mean, once you present metrics, of course, you need to also present the background of those metrics. So if you present like this is a mean, average, or this is the predictions, but then you need to know, okay, what was the background of that? So I think that's also really important to know if you have trained a model, which years or which data did you train the model on. So that needs to be included when you argue with data or data decisions with others as well. So, but yeah, the argument part is really important to be able to discuss, and often it triggers questions because other people think of something that maybe you and your team didn't think about, and then you can redo it, and you will, yeah, the output will become even better. So that's a really important part. Yeah.
I can also ask a question if the audience doesn't have any. Speaking about data curiosity and critical thinking, you were showing numbers, percentages among the data literacy in companies, among CEOs. And so can you please give an example how the data was gathered, how to measure the data literacy?
Yeah, I don't know the exact details around those surveys, but I can think about that there are maybe some questions if people know what the difference between median or average and those kind of things are, and that would be one of those questions, I think. But I don't know exactly the details on how they got those questions. If it was a test that you did and then you had some score on that, but sorry, I don't know exactly how it was gathered.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
We have a couple of minutes if there are more questions from the audience. Yeah.
Hello, thank you for the speech. The target audience about the executives, when do you think we have politicians who will kind of use notebooks in their discussions on a national level?
That's interesting. I think I've seen my managers on a quite high level use notebooks today. So when it comes into the boardrooms and the higher, it's hard to say, but maybe they will use it as their discussion material instead of PowerPoints, because I think PowerPoints are quite stale and you can't do that much with them. They just it's just basically characters and words. But if you have some interactive part, then I think that will become, important in the highest management meetings as well, for people to play around and actually look at data in different ways of just looking at like a screenshot from something. So I think it's hard to say when it will, but I think it already is in some ways in some companies. So.
Will there be any more questions from the audience? No? Yeah, then thank you so much for this very interesting presentation.
Thank you.
Again.
Thank you.
Yeah, and according to the schedule, there will be a coffee break now. So everyone welcome to have coffee.